This is Alexandra Palace. Through its more than 150-year history, it's been affected by multiple fires, periods of neglect, acts of vandalism, and 2 world wars. It's been rebuilt, repurposed, restored, and refurbished many times over. In this series, I'm building it out of Lego. Last time we started work on the large central section of the model, building the main entrance to the palace's Great Hall. Now we're just about ready to move on to its magnificent rose window. Before starting on the window itself, I needed to make the base for it to rest on. This is largely a pretty simple structure of classic bricks, with a few offsets and attachment points for specific parts of the window that we'll see shortly. For the design of the window itself, I started by looking through all the different parts available in transparent colours, and identified the ones I could use to represent the various elements of the stained glass design. I then had to figure out how to build something that could support all of those pieces in the right place. I looked at various parts like wheels or Technic gears to provide some structure, but none of them seemed quite suitable. The main issue is that they typically had 6 or 8 point symmetry, while the design of the window is based around 5 and 10 point symmetry, which I really wanted to capture faithfully since it's important to that very recognisable rose design. The first part of the solution that I came up with is the rear glass of the window, built from a variety of transparent light blue parts. Here I'm using a mix of bricks and tiles to position some outward-facing headlight bricks as attachment points for the other elements of the window to sit in just the right place. Much of the challenge of designing this was the limited selection of parts available in that transparent light blue colour, and a big challenge of building it is that when all the parts are in that same transparent colour, it's very hard to see what you're doing. To help with this, I selected all of the parts of each type in LEGO Studio and colour-coded them to allow me to see the layout better. I made a few adjustments to the design as I went along. I ended up using more headlight bricks than expected, and needed to order more, which is why you can see that white one at the top as a placeholder while I was waiting for these to arrive. I was reasonably happy with it overall, but wanted to see if I could close some of the small gaps you can see towards the middle of the window. I reviewed again all the small parts available in transparent light blue. I found I could close some of the gaps with small wedge pieces, and I also ordered some of these 1x1 plates with teeth, which helped close the remaining horizontal gaps. With the rear glass complete, it's time to start building up the stained glass design. The centre of the window is easy enough, just created using a couple of transparent dish pieces in different colours. The rest of the window required progressively more imaginative techniques. Creating a circular design at this scale was very tricky. The approach of building that back layer with carefully positioned headlight bricks allowed me to support these 10 transparent yellow diamond-shaped tiles in a small circle quite accurately. I had initially attempted a design using a similar approach to place all of the coloured pieces across the whole window, but it simply wasn't possible to get headlight bricks positioned at all the right offsets in such a small space to support multiple concentric circles of pieces. I happened to notice the box art on a LEGO set that reminded me of these leaf pieces, which I realised might be a good way to approximate the blue metalwork of the window. With a little bit of experimentation, I found I could join 10 of them together in a circle that was just the right size for the window at the scale I was building it. And, since these pieces have studs at the end of each branch, they provided plenty of attachment points for all the remaining pieces that I needed to position. So all the rest of the coloured glass is built up around this circular structure, with some overlapping layers to create more specific shapes, and various 1x1 parts to provide a bit more detail. These red 1x1 tiles with teeth work really nicely to suggest the rose shape at the centre of the design. The 1x1 transparent blue tiles are oddly hard to come by for some reason and fairly expensive. Fortunately, I had the exact number of these that I needed in my childhood LEGO collection, and managed to find them all after quite a bit of digging. The leaf pieces are flexible, and the whole structure is quite fragile at this point, but once it's in place it's pretty safe from being knocked about, and has held up just fine through being transported to multiple LEGO exhibitions. It's secured by just 2 points at the top and bottom of the circle. The last part of the window are the long beams going across its diameter. These are made from Technic cables attached to those pins around the supporting structure of the window. This is another good example of where I had to adjust my design slightly when it came to the actual build. The cables in real life have a little more slack in them than LEGO Studio suggests when designing digitally, so I added some more height into the design to keep them taut. The curved brickwork around the window is not too complicated, just using regular slope pieces. The inner circle of tan bricks will rest on these dark red pieces, with the fiddly half-plate offset from the end of the previous video helping to align the pieces to create a smoother curve. The main challenge in constructing this section was working out a sensible order in which to put it together. I hadn't really noticed when working digitally, but there were a few places where everything was connected to everything else in a way that made it difficult to place the final bricks without pulling earlier sections apart. With all of that done, we finally have the window completed and in position on the model. Now we can start building up the rest of the upper section of the Great Hall, which turns out to be no less fiddly. There's an enormous amount going on in a small area here, which was very challenging to design and build. The towers at the sides have some slightly tricky brickwork to join up with the roofline of the side wings. The decorative pattern of rectangles and circles here is built the same way as the side wings in the previous episode, just with the colours inverted. There's also a similar snot technique here to what we saw at the top of the west tower a few episodes ago, but with slightly more space to work in, making things a little easier. The trickier piece was the central section here. First, I wanted to represent the multicoloured pattern in the brickwork. Of course, at this scale I'd have to compromise a bit, but I thought I could just about represent this pattern using 1x1 tiles, which meant building up a lot of these stacks in just the right colours and attaching them around the window. The next challenge was this circular window towards the top of the building. The window itself has a neat solution. Its much more common 6-point symmetry is captured nicely by a single piece, this Technic wheel hub that happens to be available in a suitable shade of blue. This is simply held in place with a Technic axle attached at the rear of the model. The surrounding black bricks here prevent light passing through from the back. Part of the challenge here was getting the positioning right. This is a busy section of the model with a lot going on, so it took a bit of trial and error to create the supporting structure to hold the window at just the right height. The real difficulty comes where the surrounding brickwork meets this circular window, especially where the bottom of the window frame comes together with the top of the arch below. There's just space to squeeze in an inverted bracket piece here along with a couple of headlight bricks to give me just a few studs to build off. Onto those studs I needed to fit the top of the arch below and the bottom of the window frame above, which actually overlap with each other. I used these 1x1 round plates to offset the outer studs, allowing a tile piece to be placed in front of the window frame above, which would attach to the two studs on the bracket in the middle. I placed the window itself first, then finished building the patterned wall up as close to it as possible before adding the frame. These round tile pieces are just the right size to create a window frame, but actually fitting them around the wheel hub is almost impossible. After a lot of trial and error designing in LEGO Studio, I found something that seems to work. Trying to build it for real though, I found there wasn't quite enough space for the pieces to all fit and be held securely together. Those round tile pieces clashed with the circular window frame pieces. I'd need to find something narrower to get past the window frame and still provide a stud in front to attach that plate to. Having reached the limits of my digital designs, I needed to improvise here in this intricate area of the build, and started raiding my parts box for alternative options. These 1x1 cone pieces worked better and allowed the window frame to stay attached. Next, I had a similar but even more fiddly challenge at the top of the frame. The main difficulty here was that the circular window frame pieces needed to be attached to a stud and also needed to cover the rim of the wheel. That means whatever piece that stud belongs to needs to avoid overlapping with the wheel rim. I achieved this at the bottom of the window frame using a carefully positioned bracket piece, but it's not possible to do the same at the top due to the thickness of the bracket itself. I tried various options here, both regular and inverted brackets, round 1x1 plates and the 1x1 cones again, but none of them could quite fit in this busy area of the model no matter how I placed them. Holding the round window frame pieces in place shows just how little clearance there is. This is the only part of the model where I was tempted to resort to gluing or cutting some pieces. I came pretty close to giving in and doing this until I had one more idea. There are a few pieces with a narrow bar supporting a stud at the end. It turns out these plain old tap pieces, which have been around since the mid-80s, were just the right size to squeeze into the tiny space available here and present the studs to hold the top of the window frame. The whole construction is a little fragile with those tap pieces attached to a bracket connected to the roof above, but it does all hold together, and I haven't had any issues even when transporting the model to and from events. In fact, those tap pieces worked so well that I decided to use them for the bottom of the circular frame as well, which, after a bit more experimentation and improvisation, allowed the whole frame to fit neatly and snugly around the wheel hub being used for the window. The last piece of detail for this section of the model is the brickwork immediately under the roof. This is a similar pattern of rectangles and circles that we've seen elsewhere on the model, but in this case is set at an angle under the roof. There's also a line framing this brickwork at the same angle, continuing from a vertical line further down. There were two main challenges here, setting everything at the correct angle, and just fitting all of this fine detail into very little space, without much room for hiding any supporting structure. The masonry frame is made with a couple of layers of plates and tiles attached at the bottom with a clip, acting as a hinge allowing me to set it at the correct angle. The pattern of rectangles and circles is built up exactly as before on a single layer of tiles, each hanging off a single Technic pin at the top, from which it could rotate freely, but all the other surrounding pieces keep it in place. With all of that done, it was finally time to build the roof itself, which is possibly the simplest part of the whole model. It's all very standard building with chunky bricks and slope pieces, just like in some of the classic basic LEGO sets. The only real challenge here was attaching it to the rest of the model in the correct position without accidentally destroying any of the intricate brickwork below. This definitely took a few attempts, partly because of the amount of improvisation and redesign that had gone on. Once in place though, it was all pretty sturdy. On top of the roof are a couple more turrets, which have a little more visual detail to them, but are still relatively straightforward builds of bricks, tiles and plates. The finishing touch is the statue on top of the roof. While the overall model is smaller than minifig scale, the real statue at the top of Alexandra Palace is actually larger than life, at about 3.5 metres tall, so a minifigure is just the right size to represent it in the model at scale. The statue is called the Angel of Plenty, a benevolent figure looking out over North London. The minifigure body here is taken from an elven statue from one of the Lord of the Rings sets, while the wings and hair are from a rather more malevolent weeping angel from a Doctor Who set. With that, the grand centrepiece of this model is complete, and we're well over halfway, with just the east wing of the palace to build. This is not merely a mirror of the west wing, but has its own unique history and detail to be captured in the model, as we'll see next time. Until then, thank you for watching, and happy building!